Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to another episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. We're hanging out on the Nerd Party Network at thenerdparty.com. Check it out for all kinds of great shows. We got Star Trek stuff, we got movie stuff, we got Star Wars stuff, because you need all the Star franchises. And we have Carley Cooper back here to chat with us today. Carley, welcome back.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me back.
I'm as I said, I think we did ourselves a disservice by waiting so long to have you back for between Some Like It Hot and Clue. It was literally a year. And
yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna say you'd done yourself a disservice, so I'm glad you brought it up, but I agree.
I figured you would. And we're gonna be going back to what we'd originally kind of planned, I think, all the way back when we did Some Like It Hot, which, revealed my complete lack of Marilyn Monroe knowledge. And that was the first I know. And that was the first Marilyn Monroe. I get it. I'm shamed. I feel terrible. You don't have to keep rubbing it in. But we're amending it. You are here to save me, to make sure that you pull me out of the depths of this shame and despair. Yes. And we're going to continue our when I say continue, I mean, really, we kind of stopped. So I guess we're picking it back up is the better phrase.
It right back up.
We're going to be watching The 7-Year Itch, which is another film that is directed by Billy Wilder, who did Some Like It Hot.
Yes.
And where does this rank for you in Marilyn Monroe movies? What is this? This is the one with the iconic, like, her dress gets blown up by the grate. Is that this one?
Yes. So if you don't know anything else about Marilyn Monroe, one of the images that people always have of her is in that iconic white halter pleated dress, and she's standing over the subway grate, and the skirt is blowing up, and all these men are like, woo, 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 real excited about it.
Yeah, that's typically the sound I make when I see something like that happen. Woo, 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 woo. But yes, I know this image. I know this. I didn't know what film it was in. I also didn't know that. I think when we discussed Some Like It Hot, we also talked about how tough it was to work with Marilyn Monroe. Like, everyone was kind of mean to her, but she was also kind of out of it, and she couldn't remember her lines. And I know Billy Wilder was miserable working with her. And I don't know if he said this exactly, but I'm pretty sure he did. He was like, I'll never work with her again. So I was kind of surprised. Now, this is before Some Like It Hot.
It is before, and it's, it's earlier in her career. It's while she was married to Joe DiMaggio, and this film actually had a lot of drama between the two of them going on behind the scenes. So that whole iconic scene with her in that white dress, Joe DiMaggio was not okay with that. And he sometimes would get violent with her. So, like, I'm sure working with her on set during this time was also a little bit difficult because of her personal life. Like, from my understanding of her, biography is like, she wasn't as on the pills as she was, during the Some Like It Hot time or a few other films. But the trauma that was going on behind the scenes within her marriage, I'm sure brought a lot of drama to the set, because Joe DiMaggio would be hanging around on set. He was very involved in her career at the time.
You're the Marilyn expert. That's why I need you to tell me these things.
I love Marilyn. I have such a soft spot in my heart for her, and it kind of makes me feel bad that I enjoy talking about her so much, because one of the things that she really wanted is that when she was gone, she didn't want anyone to talk about her, and she's just so iconic. So it's like, you want to be respectful, but at the same time, how can you not talk about her wonderful movies? And
I would like to think if Marilyn Monroe could listen to these episodes, she would be like, you know what? No one else can talk about me, but these two 100%. They are allowed to discuss.
I think so, because I like to think of it as, I'm a big fan of hers. I think she can do no wrong, even when she's doing the worst. You know what I mean? Like, like during Some Like It Hot, perfect. She did no wrong for me, but they were writing lines in the dresser drawers for her because she couldn't remember
Yeah.
them. So she's just, I'd like to think that she would like what I have to say about her because I just think she's fantastic. I think she's wonderful. I think she was so much more than anybody ever allowed her to be. I think she was a lot smarter than most people realized, and she was smart about kind of playing up that dumb angle so they'd underestimate her. I think she was used in a lot of ways by different people because of the image she had, because of the stardom, that the level of star that she was. Like, she kind of like made this, I mean, there were obviously movie stars and stuff before and after, but she was just this, round the world instant. Everybody loved her. She was like gorgeous. She was just this icon.
Now, I don't remember, you probably told me on the Some Like It Hot episode, but remind me how you got introduced to her. Was it through Some Like It Hot? Was it through the 7 Year Itch? Do you remember the first movie you saw with her?
The very first movie that I saw that she was in was All About Eve. And that is a Betty Davis movie. But Marilyn had a very, very small part in that. And this was, really like at the very, very beginning of her career when she first started getting speaking roles and stuff. And I knew who Marilyn Monroe was, obviously. Like, who doesn't know who that is? Like, everybody, even if you've never seen a movie, you know who she is. Like it's impossible to get away from. Her image is used so much in pop culture, but she had this small bit in that, and then I watched this other movie called Monkey Business, but that's not like well known enough, for I feel like it to be like a missing frames contender because it's not something most people have come across. Then there's this other fantastic movie that I've seen a million times because I think it's hilarious. It's called We're Not Married, and it's basically a movie about these 5 couples that got married over the course of this 1 week. And a couple years down the line, they realize that they're actually not legally married because the guy that married them didn't actually have his paperwork, like to be an ordained minister or whatever. And so like that movie is hilarious because there are just 5 different types of couples, like the unhappy couple, the gold digger lady couple, the really like sweet, loving couple, like where the guy's going overseas. They all have their own little dramas, and they're just kind of almost like these little vignettes. But I didn't see any of her like big blockbuster hit ones where she was like the lead lady probably until high school. And then I think the first one that I saw was The Prince and the Showgirl, which that one's really, really good.
Where does 7 Year Itch rank in all these?
7 Year Itch is pretty high up. I think it's fun. I think it's really funny. I think she does a wonderful job in the film. Like, she's so stunning. Her eyes are so blue, like the red lips, that white dress, it's just like that iconic Marilyn. And Tom Ewell, the lead, because she's the co-star, he does a fantastic job in it, and it's really funny watching him struggle. Like, do you know anything about the premise of this movie?
I know nothing about this movie.
Okay, so do you know what the 7 Year Itch means?
No, I know nothing.
Okay, well, so the 7 Year Itch is a term in marriage. When you've been married for 7 years, you kind of get the itch to maybe like want to get out, and like you've got kids now, you guys are settled, it's like this point in your marriage where maybe you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to be married anymore. I might want to get out of this, And so I'm not going to tell you like too much about anything other than like that's the title of the movie. So this movie, the premise is Tom Ewell is at home now while his family is gone for the summer, and Marilyn Monroe is this gorgeous woman that moves into the upstairs apartment of his building.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see what's going on here. The stage is set for some shenanigans, is what it sounds like.
Yes, and she's just like sweet as pie, and she plays this role so well. Like I feel like you'll be able to tell like that she's more on her game with this than she was in Some Like It Hot. In this movie, she's kind of at her I don't want to say at her prime because she is just like magnetic. You can't take your eyes off of her. I mean, she's stunning. Like her little mannerisms are so charming. And, you kind of like, if you aren't already like in love with Marilyn, like I feel like this movie maybe makes you fall in love with her a little bit. You know what I
So
mean?
Like It Hot, I was already like instant, like it was immediate. Like I was like, oh, I get it
Yeah.
completely. She's beautiful, she's sweet, she's like kind of like dorky in a way, like a little clueless. Like
Yeah, it's so weird. She's this perfect combination that makes her like impeccably relatable to almost any girl. Like, and not even just to women. I feel like, some of the things that she feels like being, she can be a little quirky, a little awkward. She can be kind of ditzy about stuff. Like, but I don't know. There's just something about her where she's so beautiful.
there's a thoughtfulness and there's a sweetness. Like she doesn't feel like a blonde bimbo that thinks she's better than
Right.
everybody else. She's like,
Right. And I feel like part of that comes from the fact that she was so insecure herself, and growing up she wasn't like, "Oh, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're gorgeous." So she kind of lacked a lot of this like self-confidence that might have made her be more arrogant like some of the other, like big names at the time where they were
yeah,
like she just always seemed like even though she was as big as she was still somebody who was really relatable. Like she was just a regular girl who just wanted to be an actress and just wants to do a good job. And I mean, we've talked about this in the last one. I think she got horribly taken advantage of. I think she got used by a lot of people, and it's so sad, how her story turned out. And it would have been amazing to see what else she could have done and would have done with her career and what she could have done for women, and how she could have spoken out about a lot of the things that she suffered with and dealt with. And, like having domestic abuse, having
yeah.
gone through all these failed marriages, having all these miscarriages, like there's just a lot of stuff that she suffered through in the spotlight that wasn't discussed at the time because it's kind of keep that on the hush hush. But if she had
Right.
lived longer, it would have been, I feel like she would have been an advocate for a lot of women.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that just the time that she was living in, because now we know so much more about mental health and we know so much more
Mm-hmm.
about like what's right and wrong. And it seems like it would be common
If you
sense.
if you were to look at the course of her filmography and like the movies that she had done, just throughout her career, if you take those times and break them down into the individual relationships that she had, like when she was married to Arthur Miller, when she was married to Joe DiMaggio, and then her first husband, I forget his name, but so it's just interesting to watch her films, keeping in mind what was going on behind the scenes, and it makes it even like more endearing. The fact that she was like really able to get herself out of some of this and put on these comedic performances and like be sweet and relatable and endearing, and just thinking about all that she had going on the moment that those cameras were turned off.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. I was excited before, but I didn't realize Billy Wilder directed it. And
Yes.
I just watched Sunset Boulevard for the first time, and it's
okay.
I know.
Oh.
And so I'm very, very excited about it. And I mean, I thought Some Like It Hot was so wonderful. So I don't know. What do you think I'll like this as much as Some Like It Hot, or do you think this will rank a little lower?
Okay, so I mean, and we've talked about this too. The calling like anything the greatest of all time is like doing a disservice to it. And when we watch Some Like It Hot, that's listed as possibly one of the greatest comedies of all time. And I feel like the camp and the silliness to Some Like It Hot, it's not the same obviously in the 7 Year Itch because there's nobody cross dressing, like you're not dealing with that. And
Yeah.
And there's never any points in this movie, you know, like with Some Like It Hot, you know, you forget that it's a mobster movie and that these mafia guys are like chasing them around for a long time. You just forget about that. So like there's nothing like that going on in this movie where it doesn't like surprise you in that way. And this is kind of also like maybe a fun one to watch, especially now, just, you know, with the whole quarantine thing, because this is kind of, there are a lot of scenes alone with this man and his thoughts and his imagination, and like those are really funny, and seeing him like go down these like just spiraling thoughts, and you know, like oh my god, what if this, what if that, and that's really fun and that's really funny. And Tom Mule does a great job. Marilyn does a great job. I think you'll like it as much, but for different reasons.
Okay.
Because in the last one, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, like, they were such a part of why that movie worked so well.
Yes.
Like, Marilyn was a main character, yes, but it wasn't about her. It was about Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. And
right.
So this movie, again, it's not about her. It's about Tom Mule's character, and it's fun. It's great. There are a lot less characters involved. It, you know, the heavy lifting, you know, falls on both of them. There aren't as many side characters with like little funny bits or, you know, whatever, but it's great. I think you're going to like it a lot. I think if you like Some Like It Hot, you'll like this. I think you'll like her even more because she's doing a much better job of performing in this film. And it's also in color, so you get the pop of those crystal blue eyes.
I get to actually really experience it for the first time.
I like it a lot. I'm excited for you to see Marilyn in color because she's stunning in black and white, but just those blue eyes, I mean, it's just like...
Should I wear protective eye gear? Is this something I should be concerned about? Am I ready to experience the full force of Marilyn's power? Do you think I can do it?
You know, maybe have a spare pair of pants. Because she's so good. No, but I'm really excited for you to watch this movie. I'm excited to hear about what you have to say about it. I'm excited to watch it again because it's probably been like 3 or 4 years since I've seen this one. So I'm sure there'll be a few things that like I'll revisit and not have remembered, or things that I'll laugh about again.
Well, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's watch this movie, and we will be back to talk about it.
Yeah.
Now available to own on video cassette.
All right, we're back. Carley, the 7-Year Itch was so wonderful. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's great, right? I mean, it holds up, I think, comedically. You asked me if I thought you would like it better than Some Like It Hot. And you can see how it's like, it's still really fun, but I think Some Like It Hot is a little more fun, like with rewatchability.
Yeah, Some Like It Hot is definitely a better movie than 7-Year Itch, but 7-Year Itch has that, you remember, so when we did Clue, you remember when we watched Clue together? That was so much fun.
That was fun. I really enjoyed that. I liked getting to like not know what I was watching. That was cool.
Anyone listening to this episode, go back and listen to the Clue episode so you'll know exactly what we're talking about. But I complained about Clue because like I thought it was funnier. I remembered it being funnier than it really was. And it's a very funny movie. But watching 7-Year Itch, all I could think about was it's so fast and it's so quippy and every one-liner is great. And it made me think of our conversation about Clue, how I was like, oh, I wish Clue is always teetering on the edge of being like funny all the way through, but it just misses and a couple of the jokes don't hit the mark. But 7-Year Itch and the Billy Wilder movies that I've seen, or particularly the 2 comedies of his that I've seen, are so consistently funny and clever throughout that I'm never bored, even when.
And I feel like both of these movies kind of have like similar themes about how women are like overtly objectified. Yes. And that like it's like humorous that men think that's okay. So it's just funny kind of how ahead of the time it was in like understanding those problems that go on and poking fun at that stuff.
Yeah, I think the movie, like Some Like It Hot, feels really contemporary, and Some Like It Hot kind of is, I mean, they're both very much of their time. Some Like It Hot is very much writing the concept of like, oh, these guys are dressing up as girls, and what kind of kooky shenanigans are they going to get into?
So good.
It's great. And this one is kind of like, oh, this guy is, his wife and his kid are gone for the summer, and but he's going to be faithful, and he's going to, oh, whoa, who's that?
Yeah.
And that's the whole movie. So these very almost antiquated, really, really old fashioned ideas, but it's not, it doesn't feel insulting or insensitive. It just kind of milks the comic potential for all it's worth. And 7 Year Itch does a really, really good job, even more so than Some Like It Hot, because Some Like It, well, I'm not saying it does a better job than Some Like It Hot, but both movies kind of have a, they're both a one note premise. Like Some Like It Hot is, you know, guys dress up as girls, and this one is the guy's trying not to cheat on his wife, essentially, and they stretch it out to like feature length. And Some Like It Hot is better at making that work than 7 Year Itch. Like there were points where I was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess this is what the whole movie's about. It's this guy kind of, he has little fantasies, and he's kind of, you know, Marilyn Monroe will come to his room and they'll chat, and he'll be like, what do I do? And he'll monologue. It felt a little more repetitive than Some Like It Hot, but not to the point where I was bored or offended, if offended is even the right word. It was because I was more impressed by how fresh they kept it. Like it was consistently clever and funny, even though it was basically working with that very simple premise.
Yeah, and I really liked how Marilyn Monroe's character, which I never realized, like, in the times that I had watched it before, that, like, she never says her name. And
I didn't know that either.
But in the credits, she doesn't have a name. She's the girl. But what I thought was really fun in this movie is, like, she's kind of, like, seems like this dumb girl, but really she's finding ways to take advantage of things and make her situation better. And, like, she could not want him less, really. You know, like, she was so excited that he was married. You know, she was like, great, I'm not going to have to turn somebody else down. You can't ask me to marry you. This is fantastic. You know, like, and then there was this one part, oh my God, I've never related to somebody so much more in my life. But when she was like excited about eating potato chips with her champagne, I was just like, oh that sounds so fantastic. Like,
that was so funny.
Isn't it crazy?
Champagne and potato, which I don't know, is that a thing? I don't drink champagne, and I eat potato chips, but is that something that everyone should try?
I'm a big fan of like bubbles, so like I like prosecco and champagne and all of that stuff, and I love potato chips, so like the two together, why not?
You can only assume it's great. Yeah, so yeah. But that, you know, it's very true. I never thought of that, because I was, you know, I thought what's so funny is Richard Tom Ewell, who you were right, I thought he was so funny, and again he kind of he toes the line of it almost is a little like he could be really, really one note or unsympathetic or annoying, and he kind of toes that line because he does a lot of mugging for the camera where he's like what, but he's so good and he's so funny and he's so genuine. Like he has about a million monologues in this movie where he'll just be talking to himself in the house, and I think it's probably because it's I didn't realize this was based on a play, so I assume
of course. So there's not a lot of set changes. There's not a lot of different scenes. You know, like there are a couple things, and I'm sure, obviously, I'm certain that, well, I don't know. I didn't read the play, but I'm sure that the whole thing about the vegetarian nudists probably weren't in the play, but I really appreciated that.
I always, those vegetarian nudists always get, like, they get the short shrift, but in this movie, they really get their due. Well, it's funny. I mean, I haven't read the play. You haven't read the play. And Billy Wilder, I don't know if he read the play. Apparently, George Axelrod, who is the playwright, he brought the script of the play to his first meeting with Billy Wilder. And he basically said like, hey, you know, if you want to use it as a guide or like, you know, when you're filming or when you're writing your script. And Wilder apparently said, fine, we'll use it as a doorstop.
Fantastic. That's not rude at all.
That's basically, but what's funny is I feel like I watched the movie and I'm like, this movie is so clever and it's so fast paced and it's quick with the punchlines. And that almost, it's like, oh, that was him. That was Billy Wilder in general. He just is, he's always got something in his back pocket ready to zing somebody.
Okay, so let me ask you, because now you've seen Marilyn Monroe in color. Do you get it? Like, I mean, I know you got it in black and white, but do you get it?
If you're asking me if I needed to change my pants, the answer is yes. So I completely understand. But the thing is, even in Some Like It Hot, which I know was a few years later, and she was a little bit more zonked out. Although apparently she had some issues remembering lines and similar problems in 7 Year Itch. But this movie is definitely, I don't want to say it portrays her as more glamorous, because Some Like It Hot, she was very much like the ideal, like, this is the ideal woman, I'm in love with her. But it definitely felt like even more so in this movie. It was almost even more idealized and not less realistic, but you know what I mean?
There was a lot of moments where she was literally doing like these pinup poses, you know, like the very first time when you meet her and she's walking up the stairs and her fan is caught, like the angles that she's got, like in her elbows, in her like toes, you know, her hips and everything, the way that she's caught and she's like gesturing to him, it's very like pinup-esque. And like when she's in the apartment at one time and all you see are her legs, again, like the way her toes are pointed and like the way everything is, it's very, very sexy. But like she's so innocent in all of it and just like so adorable and charming. It never comes across as any type of inappropriate.
You mentioned in the first part of the episode that a lot of people sadly took advantage of her, and they kind of took her ditzy persona on the screen as like, oh, that's who she is. But it's so clear in Some Like It Hot, and even in this movie, that she was so much smarter. You're right. There is a subtext of, oh, maybe she's just using this guy for his 100%. Air conditioning. For the air conditioning.
Like, he helped her open that champagne bottle. She probably clearly like, okay, when she was taking a shower in his apartment, in my mind, I was like, wait, you have access to get up and down stairs now because you open the floorboards. Right. You chose to take a shower in his shower instead of walking upstairs to yours, probably because it was a lot nicer. You know, like probably, he has a wife. Instead of like, she probably thought their bathroom, the two men living upstairs, which it was kind of funny because like, oh, two interior designers, and they like, I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit of an innuendo in some of that, and they, you know, and so like, but it was just funny, like the way that she totally like took advantage of the situation for her sake and not. Like, he never got what he wanted out of it. Like, he had that whole fantasy where
he got a couple little kisses, and that's about it.
Yeah, but, like, she was in this, like, tiger dress, and he was playing Rachmaninoff, and she's like, it shakes me and quakes me. And then he, like, does that whole thing with her, and, like, he's like, let it wash over you. And she's kind of flopped there on the floor.
Well, the best is they play chopsticks together in reality.
And that's what does it for her. And it's just the way that she's having everything go is completely opposite of what he expected and what he wants, and she's getting everything that she wants and expects. You know,
that scene in particular, which was so funny. His fantasy scenes are great, but that's the one I'm thinking of where I felt like that was maybe a bit more representative of what Marilyn Monroe was really like in terms of her being smarter than people gave her credit for. Because the way she plays that role when she walks into the room and she's like a voluptuous vixen and she's like, oh yes, play the piano for me. Don't stop. Don't ever stop. Why did you stop? Like the way she way she throws off the lines, like everything she does, she's so it goes beyond just like the surface level of like, oh, she's funny and she can act like she's capable. There's very clearly a thought process behind the line readings, and there's very clearly like all I thought during that scene was like, she is so clever and she's so funny and she clearly knows what she's doing. So then the more innocent kind of like clueless persona feels even more like you get the sense of the dynamic. Like with Some Like It Hot, you kind of only got to see one side, but with this, you get to see through the fantasies a little bit more variety, and you get to see how talented she was. I kept thinking about that because of all the stuff you told me, but I just kept thinking about how, like you said, she was way smarter than people gave her credit for, and I did get that 100%. Vibe from that.
And you know, like if you look into some of her personal life history, it's really, really sad because like her family, you know, upbringing and everything, and not knowing her dad and her mom being institutionalized, and then she was in an orphanage for a while and she got married at like 16. You know, like she just grew up in this, like she just wanted to be loved, and she wanted to be a movie star, you know, like, and she saw herself on the screen, and she just like was so desperate for somebody to love her and like be there for her, that she got in these scenarios where she was made really vulnerable because she wanted a family, you know, and it just never really worked out. And like in this movie specifically, like that iconic scene over the subway grate with the white halter dress and that's blowing up, like Joe DiMaggio was pissed about that. Like that caused a huge problem. Yeah, so I imagine, because if you look at a lot of her other movies, she is wearing very, very sexy clothes. Like in Some Like It Hot, she's wearing that one sheer dress where literally the sequins are just covering what would have to be censored, you know?
Yeah.
And so she's, in this movie, even that sexy picture, when you finally see it, it's a lot more covered up than you would have imagined, you know? Like when he's when she's describing that she took a scandalous photo on the beach and it was the textures because you could see the sand and her skin and the driftwood, and then you finally see it, and it's like, it's not, you don't see any of the front of her chest. She's kind of turned away from the camera in that bathing suit. So it's like,
and they play it up because they keep showing, like Richard looks at it and then he shows it to the author or the doctor,
the Dr. Brubaker.
Right, and he's like, look at the photo, and they go, yes, interesting driftwood position too.
Yeah, nice driftwood formations.
I love when he tries to. He's like, yes, you see, there's the driftwood. I can't remember what the explanation is, but when he's like, because
it's called textures because of the 3 different textures: the sand, the driftwood, and her skin. But when you look at that photo, there's also the ocean. There are a bunch of rocks there. Right. There's her bathing suit. Like they make it sound like she's nude amongst sand and driftwood, but there's a lot more going on in that photo when you finally see it.
Yeah, I was expecting it, like you said, to be a little bit more explicit, just because they hadn't shown it. Like they kept having them look at it, but they wouldn't show the shot of it.
I mean, I don't know for sure, and whatever I read, it didn't say specifically, but there were times where Joe DiMaggio was very adamant about her not wearing certain things or not being too showing off. So I'm sure there was probably an attempt to get a more scandalous photo, but that was like not gonna happen.
Yeah, and I know that Billy Wilder was also kind of, his hands were tied because of the times. Like he said originally that Richard and the girl were going to end up sleeping together, but the censors just were like, no, you can't do that. He's a married man. You can't have it. And I know Wilder was really upset by that. And he basically said he didn't really disown the movie, but he did say he was disappointed and didn't feel he got to make the movie he wanted, and that he wished he could do something, like he could have made it later in his career, like when things like that weren't as strict.
I get that, because I feel like the whole point of the film and watching it is like seeing a man really struggle with the morality of, you know, like this temptation. And the idea, you know, they talk about how so many people end up being unfaithful, like percentages and whatever. Like, I feel like it would have been like a more powerful moment to see like he realized that he really screwed up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And even I think you need to actually, and now I think we're making the movie a little bit more dramatically effective, but at the beginning you need to get the sense that he actually like cares about his wife, because he's talking about it the whole movie, like, no, I love my wife, I always love my wife, she's the best,
he's constantly saying she's getting older, she's 31 now, and she's getting old. It's like, what? She's like, gonna lose her looks and I'm gonna look the same, I'm gonna look 28 forever, that's how it happens.
That's what it's like. You never get the feeling that he really, really like loves her. So again, in this movie, it's essentially, it's just a zany comedy. So how dramatic can you get? Like, I kind of understand. At the same time, I sort of get what Wilder's saying, where, like you said, that adds a little bit more heft to it and a bit more layers and more textures if he ends up sleeping with the girl.
I think it would be along the lines of, how, like, I mean, and this is maybe like relating it to something that anyone's going to disagree with me about, but how, like, in Shakespearean, like, theater, like, at the time, if there was a wedding at the beginning, typically it meant it was going to be a comedy. And, like, with Romeo and Juliet, like, it ended up being a tragedy. I kind of feel like this could have gone the same way, but in, more so, like, with him realizing he really screwed up with his wife, and it's more dramatic, and him overcoming that and fixing things with her, like, would have been a really powerful thing, and maybe something that a lot more people could have related to and maybe benefited from viewing.
You could even have had Marilyn Monroe go with him. Like, she's like, no, I'm going to help you win back your wife. And you could still keep the comedy level up. Well, also, imagine? Like you said, yeah, you can make it a little bit more.
She shows up to Maine with him. And oh my gosh.
And it just becomes a disaster. Like, she's like, no. We did end up sleeping together, but I don't love him. And like, he's like, yeah, she really doesn't. And I don't love her. And they're like, that's right. And you could keep the slapstick angle going, but also have a little bit more to it. And I think maybe that's part of it. There's not a lot of it's not very dynamic. Like I said, it's more, Some Like It Hot had a lot going on. You had beyond just the two guys, you had this love story, you had their friendship, you had the mob coming after them. There was so much going on, and they go to different places.
You had the love story between Jack Lemmon and what was that guy's name?
I don't remember, but I know. Yes,
Osgood.
Osgood. So there's so much going on, and 7 Year Itch is really so focused on Richard and the girl, and there's some variety, and the fantasy sequences, oh my god, those are fantastic.
They're hilarious. Those are so good, and those are so, like, I love the fact that he's imagining his wife laughing at him, like, when he's trying to be like, no, I've been hit on, and she's like,
and again, the movie, it feels contemporary because the humor feels so ahead of its time. Like when she says, I don't know, Richard, lately you've begun to imagine in CinemaScope with stereophonic sound. And the movie was filmed in CinemaScope.
He's like, it could be Marilyn Monroe in the kitchen, like, and they keep mentioning the creature from the Black Lagoon. And
all the fantasy sequences are so good. I remember the early ones where he's thinking about his assistant coming to visit him, and then like, he's basically explaining to his wife, like,
what do you see? I'm a woman, aren't I? A woman.
And the one where the nurse, and she's like, oh, I love you so much. And he goes, please, Miss Finch, my adhesions. Like,
he she's like, surgery. You could beat me. You could beat me and I'd only come back for more.
And the bed, like, she moves the bed up and then he puts it back down slowly as she is escorted out of the room by security. But the movie is so.
When she got her foot stuck in the tub and he's fantasizing about her getting her foot stuck again in the tub and like telling the plumber about everything.
Oh my god. Well, yes, I mean, like, the movie is that the fantasy sequences really do offer some variety, because otherwise you're stuck in this apartment and you're not really going anywhere. But you get these montages where you have the whole montage at the beginning where he's trying to tell his imaginary the imaginary version of his wife, like, oh no, there have been plenty of times where I could have hooked up with somebody else. And then you have this amazing montage in the middle where he imagines that she's gone off and told everybody that she's spent the night with him. No, it wasn't that she spent the night with him. It was that when he tried to make a move on her at the piano.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And yeah, like you said, yes, she's like doing the toothpaste commercial, which by the way, she performs for him and he goes, "You do that beautifully." And she's talking about like plaque and like,
she really does though. I mean, she really, really does. She does such a good job. That smile that she has, just the way that she holds herself, like she does such a good job.
It's too good. And then he has the fantasy after he tries to make a move on her. He imagines she's going to go out and tell everybody. So he imagines her, like you said, in the TV studio, and she's looking at the camera and like at the end of the commercial.
Mommy, they're talking about Daddy on TV.
And everybody's watching, like his wife
sitting at the
son.
lake watching TV on the lake.
It's so brilliant. And I love the line that after she does the toothpaste, she's like, "And now that I have your attention," as if people are like so amazed by this toothpaste that now they're going to listen to that. And then they keep doing the callback. He was
frothing at the mouth like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
And they keep referencing it. And like, then, like you said, when she's in the bathtub and she's telling the plumber, and then he's telling everybody later when he's having dinner, and then they go see the movie Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is so brilliant. Yeah,
which is one of my all-time favorite movies. So like that being a thing in it too makes it a little more fun.
Well, we should watch that one because I have not seen Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Shawn.
I know.
You haven't seen that one? Okay, we have to watch that one. That has to be our next one to do because that's a phenomenal movie.
We'll do that one next.
Okay.
The movie is so full of, like, there's always something right around the corner where every time I thought I was going to be kind of bored by it because I was like, all right, well, how long can this go on? How long can this concept of a guy trying to resist this beautiful woman go on? And it goes on for an hour and 45 minutes and is constantly funny, even if it's not like particularly it's not like it's gripping. Gripping is not the right word for the movie, but it does hold your attention and it's fun and it's sweet. And Marilyn Monroe is great, but Tom Ewell is also great.
He's great in it too, but I feel like one of the things about Marilyn Monroe movies, just something that I've noticed, is if she's on screen, like whatever she's doing, I want to watch it. And she just has this magnetism to her, and it's just those little movements she does. Like when she was pointing out in the book, "Oh, you have live photo. Oh, look here, that's me." And she's pointing it out, and she like kind of puts her arms behind her back and like kind of wiggles her shoulders a little bit, and like just she does these little mannerisms that it's just impossible to look away. And it's also impossible to not enjoy it. Like, kind of like when you watch a really cute puppy video, you know, it's so endearing.
It is. It's one of those moments where, like, she had so much. Like, it's just like she's the perfect epitome of a movie star. But even better, because I feel like there's so many times you could see, like, a beauty like Marilyn Monroe. And if you don't know anything about her, you could assume, like many people did, that it was just like, oh, it's a ditzy. She's probably like, she looks real great, but she's probably not a great actress. But she was amazing, and she could act, and she knew how to use her looks in the most effective way. Like you said, she like just these little mannerisms and expressions, but also she was just really great. And I've only seen her now. I've only seen her in these two movies, which are both comedies, but I would love to see her in a serious movie and see what
she didn't really do too many serious films. I mean, it was like later on, really,
and she got typecast basically, right?
She really did, because like she was just bit parts until I want to say Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was her first big one.
That was the big one.
I could be wrong on that, but she was cast as like these ditzy people, and like they, you know, didn't want her for anything else, and she was turning down movies because she didn't want to, you know, be typecast like that anymore. And it wasn't until a little, like, I don't think it was until she married Arthur Miller, and he wrote The Misfits for her.
Right.
And Bus Stop was a comedy too. I mean, she really, she just she wasn't cast in those things because the studios didn't think people wanted to see her like that.
And this is the Arthur Miller who wrote like The Crucible and
Yes.
Death of a Salesman.
Yes.
That's insane. So that's crazy. So she was married to him. So I guess that was maybe in some way a means to kind of like lend herself some credibility, just to be like, to get people to stop looking at her in this way of like, oh, she just does this one thing. I do see this. I'm looking at this quote now where she said, in regards to her being a sex symbol, she said, "I never quite understood it, the sex symbol. I always thought symbols were those things you clash together. That's the trouble. A sex symbol becomes a thing. I just hate to be a thing. But if I'm going to be a symbol of something, I'd rather have it be sex than some of the other things they've got symbols of," which is great.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I take it back. She was in Niagara, which is like a thriller in 53. Okay. So, hot lady in a scary movie.
Yeah. I just want to, I want to know if there is a movie out there that's kind of more represents, like, because she so clearly has the chops to pull something like that off, and I would love to see it. Somebody out there, tell us what the most serious Marilyn Monroe role is.
I think I'm gonna say I think it's The Misfits, which was her last film that was completed because she was making Something's Gotta Give when she passed. But she was also fired from that movie, so
that's right. I can't. You watch a movie like 7 Year Itch or Some Like It Hot, and you see her and how magnetic and radiant she is, and you almost don't want to have to connect the dots to just this terrible, terrible personal life, because it's so sad. Yeah. It's just so sad because you look at, and she was what, 33 when she died?
36.
How old was she? 36. So she was young.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awful.
I know. And like what I was saying, just all the things that she'd been through, and like if she had lived longer, like even into her 60s, she could have been a big advocate for women, like in the 80s, like in things that were starting to be able to be talked about more, like totally. Where they really weren't, like it was fine that Joe DiMaggio was causing a problem for her and getting mad at like what she was wearing, and that was just like, all right, we just got to deal with that, like, and that's so not okay, and that hasn't been okay for longer than just now. So it's sad that she didn't get to be the great actress that, like, we didn't get to see her the way that she should have been seen. And we didn't get to see her in the roles that she really wanted to be in.
I wonder if I would have loved to have seen her recover, because it felt like Billy Wilder was pretty outspoken and probably a little too much, probably too outspoken about the difficulties of working with her. And it's unfortunate. It would have been nice to see her kind of get over some of those shortcomings and some of the issues and be able to do those things. Because I don't know, like, there was just so much going on in her life. It would have, like you said, it would have been really nice to see her come out, because you do get the sense that this is she could have been a really strong proponent of like, this is why you don't do these things. These are the terrible things that happen to me, and let me fight to make sure it never happens to anybody else.
Yeah, and I think one of the sad things too is like, because of what was going on in her personal life, people probably weren't willing to go out on a limb for her to give her a dramatic role when filming was always such a problem with her.
Yeah.
And they knew that these films where she was sexy were going to sell and going to be seen, and she did really well in them, and she was great in them. So it's like, we know this works, and we know we're going to make money off of it. We don't know if you're going to do a good job with the dramatic stuff, and you're such a nightmare to deal with, through no fault of her own on some of those things, I'm sure. Yeah. But, like, it's just, it sucks that she got taken advantage of that way, and it's just, like, I'm so grateful that she was able to make some of these movies, and that her story has been able to be told so that people are aware of it, and, like, it's less likely to happen to anybody else, or, people are more willing to take a beautiful woman a little more seriously, like, she's not just the beautiful face, like, she's also a smart person who has feelings.
She's just a person in general. Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
so as awful as it is, and maybe it's frustrating for me because I would love to have seen her, and maybe it is out there. Maybe The Misfits is the movie, but it's still, she's still so good in these. Like, it's like, even though she's playing a type and she's playing the ditzy blonde, there's so clearly a thought process behind it. And she absolutely is, I think, with 7 Year Itch, she is absolutely one of the selling points for the movie, without a doubt, like you said. But when we have Tom Ewell dancing off his clothes in his bedroom, I do want to give him a shout out too, because not just anyone can do that. I mean, Marilyn Monroe, she doesn't dance off her clothes in the movie. So when Tom Ewell is in his bedroom and he's literally dancing off his clothes so he can go to bed, I wanted to give, it was no surprise to me that he won a Golden Globe. I feel like that scene alone earned it for him.
No, he was so great in this movie, and the fact that, like, I mean, it wasn't just like a one-man cast, but he had so many scenes by himself and so many
he's basically carrying he's carrying the movie.
Yeah, and even though there are these fantasies that he's having, like, and you see a little bit of that, it is mostly a man by himself worrying about this, you know, beautiful lady and thinking about her and talking about her and talking about how all of these women are interested in him, but he's such a good guy and he's such a good husband, you know, he would never do that. And he could have any woman he wanted because he's going to be handsome forever.
Yes. And I remember the other scene, one of the other imaginary scenes he comes up with, when his wife is on the hayride with, what's his name? The other guy that he imagines she's cheating on him with.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but I love when she's like, he's basically like, it doesn't matter, nobody's around. And she goes, but what about the driver? And he goes, there is no driver. And it's just the horses pulling the wagon.
Tom McKenzie. Yeah. He's like, I even went so far, I thought of everything. I put blinders on the horses.
Right. But at the end he shows up and there's like a confrontation between him and Richard.
Yeah.
And
he's all like, what are you talking about? Are you drunk? It's like 8 a.m.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because you brought up the Marilyn Monroe line. Like, because at the end he goes like, he's kind of losing it. And Tom sort of calls him out on it, and then he asks him, he's like, "Is somebody in your kitchen?" He's like, "Anybody could be in my kitchen. It could be Marilyn Monroe." And that's when I was like, okay, is the movie suggesting that all of this is taking place in his head? Like, I couldn't tell if that's what, because some of the stuff that happens, particularly in that scene, is so ridiculous, because he punches the guy out, and like then somebody comes in and carries Tom out of the apartment. But I couldn't tell. And the movie, I feel like Billy Wilder is clever, absolutely clever enough to imply that. But that Marilyn Monroe line, to me, the fact that she's not named throughout the movie, and then he says it could be Marilyn Monroe, I was like, is this all in his head? Did he imagine this entire weekend?
Reason I would say that it's not just all in his head, because the janitor had also had interactions with her and saw them together and was like, whoa, didn't know that this was going on. Cool, man, I'm gonna get out of here. And he's like, it's not what you think it is. And then, like, has him carry that tomato plant back upstairs, you know?
Right.
And then, the fact that they're, like, going and seeing the creature from the Black Lagoon, they're talking about, like, current pop culture. So I feel like because of them also kind of, like, making that, like, Technicolor joke, that it's just, like, I think it's just, like, a cheeky thing that they're trying to do, where people are like, oh, haha, but it is Marilyn Monroe. You know what I mean?
Right, okay.
And also because he had that book and didn't know that her photo was in there. I mean, maybe he did. Maybe he'd seen it before and just didn't remember. But, like, her asking, like, if he wanted her to sign it and stuff like that. So I get what you're saying with that scene, because that was a little bit crazy. And it's like, Tom McKenzie is going to wake up and be like, what the hell? I was supposed to pick up a paddle, and now I'm, like, in an alleyway. And I was just in there, you know, like, So it was, like, really weird, and then him running off and, like, her kissing him on the lips and all of that stuff. I agree with you. Like, was that all, like, that could be construed, but I think that she was there.
Why can't you just say, Shawn, that's a brilliant theory. Nobody's ever thought of that before. This opened up a whole new realm of possibility for my understanding of not only this film, but cinema in general.
You know what, Shawn? You're right. No one's ever thought of that before or that perspective because it's wrong.
Well, all right, I'll take it. What else? I mean, the movie is it's very charming. It's very funny. It's light, but it's smart. Like I can't blame. I can't blame Billy Wilder for he didn't really swear the movie off, but he essentially said the movie wasn't great and that he's not particularly proud of it. But I don't know that that feels a little too harsh to me. I guess I'm not the guy who made it. He has every right to say that the movie didn't live up to his expectations, but the movie still succeeds in the things it's trying to do, even if it couldn't go as far as he wanted it to.
It does. But you know what I think it is? It's like, okay, look at Some Like It Hot. I know we keep referencing that movie, but that one has been credited as a contender for being the greatest comedic film of all time. So if he's like aiming at that, then no, this movie is not that. And I don't think it even gets in the top 50 comedic movies of all. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really good movie and it's fun, but I would not put it on a list for like best of whatever, like people do with Some Like It Hot. So I could understand why he would feel that way about that.
Well, do you think maybe, because something else I was thinking of, like you said, this is not Some Like It Hot, but do you think maybe this movie's reputation has been kind of overlooked a little bit because of Some Like It Hot? Like, do you think that 7 Year Itch is almost not brushed under the rug, but some people are like, oh, 7 Year Itch is great, but it's no Some Like It Hot, and it almost hurts the movie's reputation? Because I feel like do you think that maybe if Some Like It Hot hadn't been made a few years later, that people would maybe hold this one in higher esteem? Do you think it's maybe because they're comparing it to that one, maybe unfairly?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, it's just because, like, this movie was not as outlandish as Some Like It Hot. Like, just the premise of it wasn't as crazy. It doesn't take you on as much of a journey or an adventure. There's no, like, even in the moments when it seems like people have something to lose or there's like a risk, there's really not much risk, you
there's
know,
nothing at stake. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I think, as we already explained, Some Like It Hot works so much better because there's so much going on. There's so many textures, and 7 Year Itch is very much like what you see is what you get, and you get some fun, zany comedy, some really inventive imagination scenes. You get Marilyn Monroe being amazing, and Tom Ewell being super goofy. But other than that, I think you're right. I think maybe people would be a little bit more favorable maybe if Some Like It Hot hadn't come out, but there's no question 7 Year Itch is I don't think there is much deeper meaning to derive from it. And Some Like It Hot isn't like this super layered movie, but it does have a lot going on, and it is very, very smart. Not that this one isn't, but it's also very much, it's zany comedy, and Some Like It Hot feels like zany comedy, but there's a little bit more being said in that movie.
Well, and also just, you know, to be honest, like with both of those films, I feel like Some Like It Hot is iconic for like, and remembered for like, you know, some of the performances and some of the issues that they hit on. And, you know, we talked all about that in that episode. But
yeah,
with the 7 Year Itch, I feel like it's a really fun movie, but the reason that it's iconic is not because of the screenplay. It's not because of whatever issues it's talking about. It's because of that white dress subway moment, you know, and that movie is, I feel like if it didn't have that in it, honestly, it would fall by the wayside of some of these other lesser-known Marilyn Monroe movies. And it's not that I don't like it, because I honestly, like, I genuinely love movies from this time period. And, like, from the 30s to, like, the late 50s, early 60s. I love that era of film. Like, there's just so much about it that I love. It's so closely related to theater still. You know, like, the camera tricks that they would do, the way the sets would have to be, the costuming, like, all of that is just, like, amazing to me. So
Yeah.
I feel like I genuinely enjoy, like, a lot of these films for their own specific reasons within that. But this movie, if it weren't for Marilyn Monroe and if it weren't for that dress scene, it would just be another one of these quirky movies from the 50s that nobody knows about.
I do see what you're saying there. I think if you take her out of the equation, it kind of, it's a fun movie. It's very funny, but I think she brings a lot to it. And like you said,
she makes it simply elegant.
She does. And well, you know, the white dress, I didn't realize that the shot, you only see her legs. You don't see,
you only see her legs. So something funny about that too, is they actually had to shoot that twice, because the first time they really did it on the streets of New York City. And Billy Wilder had announced, like, a press release saying they were going to be doing this. So there's actually a crowd, and there were paparazzi and, you know, like, all these people to get, like, promotional stuff for this film. And there was so much noise from all of these men, like freaking out, because it was like, wow, we what? You know, they're, like, so excited to see that. And that really upset Joe DiMaggio. He did not like that whatsoever. And, like, that's a whole problem.
That probably upset him for the wrong reasons, but I can't blame him.
Yeah, but so then those takes that they did were not usable whatsoever, because, like, the audio wasn't right. You know, they couldn't, everyone was cheering and stuff. They ended up reshooting it on a soundstage. And it was just, you know, like, there was a very limited amount of people that were even allowed in the room when that was happening.
Would you have been able to not cheer Marilyn Monroe on if you had walked up on the street and saw that happening? I feel like you would have been like, wow, wow, woo, just like everybody.
No, I feel like, and maybe it's because I work within that realm of stuff. So, like, I would hate to be the one that ruined a shot. Like, that's just, like, such a nightmare of a thing. And I would hate for, like, somebody that I look up to and admire, like Marilyn Monroe, to, like, somehow single me out as the one that ruined that shot. So I would be very quietly golf clapping.
That's a very professional, like, you get the point across, but you're not, like, just being a complete slob, essentially.
I'm there in support. It's not about me. It's not about me. Like, I can cheer about this when I watch it later, but right now I'm getting to, like, see something awesome. I'm going to shut my mouth and let it happen.
It's a good philosophy to carry through life. What else? Is there anything else we have to say? Have we said pretty much everything?
I feel like, I enjoyed it. You know, I've seen it multiple times, and it's not one that, like, I need to rewatch a whole bunch. It is fun, and if, like, anybody who's listening to this has not seen it, and, like, you're into films and film history, this is definitely one you have to see, just because of that whole scene with Marilyn and the skirt and stuff, just so that you can have seen it and that's in your world and, you know, whatever. And she's fabulous in it. She's fantastic. And Tom Yule's really great too. Like, I was never bored, but you're right. It's not like a captivating movie where you're, like, on the edge of your seat. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's just like, I know what's going to happen, but I'll still watch it.
I think if you go into this movie thinking, all right, well, I guess I'll watch it for the dress scene, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that it's like, oh, there's a fun, like, zany, smart comedy surrounding this scene.
Yeah, she looks so good in it, and the dresses that she has are so great, and they're all, like, I just love Marilyn in white. Just, she looks so good in white with her platinum blonde hair and those bright blue eyes and those red lips. Like, she just looks so good. And it's not even, and, like, when the plumber comes in and he's like, what a living doll. I mean, she really does. She looks like a Barbie doll. Like, she looks like this perfect, sweet, innocent thing. And you just want to watch her, because everything she does is endearing. The way she picks up a glass, the way she kicks off her shoes, it's just so cute.
So what do you think? What should our rating system be? I think we could
How
do
elegant is it? Or how many potato chips would you dunk in your champagne for this?
How many potato chips would you dip in champagne for this movie? With 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how many champagne potato chips would you give it?
Okay, so I'm going to give it 3. And I feel a little bit bad for doing that because I don't think I've ever given any movie on this less than 4 of whatever rating it has. But I also realize that maybe I'm a little too generous with my ratings. So, in light of what I just said about how, if it weren't for Marilyn, if it weren't for this scene, I don't think this movie would be as big of a deal. It is fun. It is great.
I'll give it 4 because I think it works, despite what could have been, despite what maybe it should have been. The movie is so entertaining and fun and inventive that it feels like a great comedy to me, regardless of the shortcomings. It's not a masterpiece, but it's definitely, I feel like it's one of the funniest movies I've seen. It's one of the funnier movies I've seen. If it ended up on a list of top 100 comedies, I would put it, it would earn that spot.
I enjoy it. I think anybody who hasn't seen this movie and likes Marilyn Monroe should definitely watch it. I'm still upset with you, Shawn, for not having ever watched a Marilyn Monroe before.
Well, but think about it. We wouldn't get these great experiences if that had been the case. So just think of it as destiny has prevented me from seeing Marilyn Monroe movies so that you could be the one to say you introduced them to me and that we talked about them for all the internet to hear forever and ever. I'm basically just making an excuse for my terrible lack of film knowledge.
That's okay, though, because we're expanding your mind.
That's right. That's what the show is all about.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for continuing to expand my mind, Carley. And if other people feel like they're like, you know what, I need, if Carley's on Instagram and she has a spot where she could just expand my mind constantly, where can people follow you to have their minds expanded?
You can find me at on Instagram at Carley Does Makeup, and it's CARLEY Does Makeup, and that's the only thing that I'm on.
And I'm unfortunately on a couple things, so you can find me on Twitter at Shawn Doorman. That's SHAWN, not SEAN, you fools. And I'm also on Instagram at Shawn Doorman. So find us. Talk to us about Marilyn Monroe wherever you see fit. And Carley, thank you so much again. We will come back. We'll do Creature from the Black Lagoon next. That'll be our next one.
Honestly, I'm so excited about that because that's probably my I don't know if I can say I have an all-time favorite movie, but that's definitely a contender.
That's what we're going to do. And everyone out there, you'll just have to stay tuned for that episode. We will see you later. We'll see you later.
It'll be elegant.